Blood trickled from the corner of Colonel David Mercer's mouth as he leaned forward in the battered metal chair, hands zip-tied behind his back, boots planted firmly on the concrete floor of the abandoned warehouse outside Newark. The scent of motor oil, mold, and cold steel filled the air, thickened by the weight of what was about to happen. "For you're a tough son of a bitch, Colonel," the man with the silver ring on his thumb said, pacing slowly. "But even military types break, eventually." Mercer didn't answer. His left eye was swelling shut, and his ribs screamed every time he breathed, but he held his posture upright, steady, like he was still in uniform. Another man stepped forward, younger, impatient, with twitchy hands and a poorly holstered Glock. "Let's just finish this already. He's seen too much." Silver Ring held up a hand. "Not yet. You think he's gonna give you something? He ain't said a word since we dragged him out of the SUV. He doesn't need to say much," Silver Ring muttered, crouching so he was eye level with Mercer. "I've been watching you, Pentagon liaison, Joint Special Operations Command, and then suddenly, poof, on leave in Jersey? Doesn't add up." Mercer blinked slowly. He'd counted 6 of them, maybe more in the shadows. No one wore masks. That was never a good sign. "You're looking for something," Silver Ring said, his voice now low and curious. "Or someone. You show up here sniffing around like a bloodhound, and suddenly my guys are getting raided. So I'm gonna ask just once, who sent you?" Mercer lifted his chin. "You ever make a mistake so big you felt the world shift under your feet?" Silver Ring chuckled. "You quoting movies now?" "No," Mercer said, his voice hoarse. "I'm giving you your last chance to walk away." Laughter echoed across the warehouse. The twitchy one stepped forward. "That's it. I'm done listening to this." But Mercer moved fast. Using the chair's back legs, he pushed off the floor and swung the seat sideways into Twitchy's knees. The younger man went down with a yell, his gun clattering. In the same motion, Mercer rolled over, snapped the wooden frame on impact, and broke free of the restraints. His fingers went straight to his waistband. Before anyone could shout, he pressed a small black device against his chest. Click. A pause. Then a voice, robotic and calm, echoed from the device. Confirmed. Mercer, Clearance Alpha, Pentagon channel open. Every man in the warehouse froze. "What the hell?" Silver Ring's voice broke as Mercer stood upright, blood drying on his face, and stared them down like he'd just turned the tables. "This isn't about you anymore," he said quietly, as sirens began to rise in the distance. Multiple directions, fast, coordinated. Because when a colonel calls the Pentagon, someone answers. "You brought the Pentagon to Jersey?" Agent Nina Park asked, crouching beside Mercer as paramedics checked his vitals. "Could have just called me." Mercer gave a faint smile, the kind that barely touched his eyes. "Didn't have time for protocol." Blue and red lights washed over the broken windows of the warehouse. Mobsters were cuffed, seated on the cold ground, guarded by heavily armed federal agents. A military-grade response team in black gear swept the perimeter for explosives. "You're lucky we had a QRF on standby in the area," Nina said. "Otherwise I'd be zipping you into a body bag right now." "I calculated the risk," Mercer said, wincing as a paramedic taped gauze to his temple. "And I didn't come here to die." She glanced at the cuffed man with the silver ring, now spitting blood and curses. "You think they knew who you were?" "They had no clue. That's what makes this worse." Mercer nodded toward a duffel bag on the ground. "That's what they were protecting." Nina opened it. Inside, stacks of folders, old-school hard drives, and a battered leather notebook. Everything marked with coded tags. She picked up one of the folders, skimmed it, then froze. "Is this real?" Mercer's voice lowered. "We always suspected there was a connection between cartel smuggling routes and domestic intelligence leaks. These guys aren't just mobsters, they're part of something deeper. Someone's been feeding them information, military-grade movements, special ops timetables." "If even one of these pages got out—" "I get it," she interrupted, scanning the chaos behind them. "So who are you really after?" Mercer paused. His jaw tightened. "His codename's Rook. Used to be Army. Disappeared 5 years ago. We believed he was KIA overseas. Now we think he's the one selling intel to organized crime. Nina let that sink in. That's why you left the army. I didn't leave. I went off-grid, voluntarily. You don't chase a ghost like Rook with a desk job. She shook her head, still looking through the files. You've been hunting him solo all this time? I had to. Every time I brought it up inside the system, something got buried. Someone warned him. I couldn't trust the chain of command. Nina zipped the duffel bag shut. So what's the next move? We decipher the notebook, Mercer said. Cross-check the timestamps with the raids. Rook's real name will be in there, somewhere. Before she could respond, a comms officer approached with a phone. Sir, it's the Undersecretary of Defense. Wants to speak directly. Mercer took the phone, pressing it to his ear without hesitation. Mercer, yes sir. No, we're secure. But it's worse than we thought. This isn't just about mobsters, it's about infiltration. He paused, listening. Then, understood. I'll brief on site in 90 minutes. He handed the phone back and turned to Nina. We're not just chasing a traitor anymore, he said quietly. We're exposing an entire network. The light flickered overhead in the makeshift operations center. An old municipal building turned federal safe house for the night. Walls, once lined with town council portraits, were now covered in topographic maps, timelines, and redacted files. The air buzzed with quiet urgency. Nina sat across from Mercer at a metal table, flipping through the leather notebook they'd recovered from the warehouse. Every page was handwritten, filled with codes, initials, and what looked like coordinates. Most of it meant nothing to her, until she found a name circled in red ink. Colonel, she said, sliding the page toward him. Ever seen this before? Mercer leaned in. The handwriting was jagged but deliberate. Hollis Grant, 519, Project Ironwall. His shoulders tensed. You recognize it, Nina said. Mercer nodded slowly. Grant was my superior in Kandahar, oversaw a lot of our tech logistics. Good man, until he disappeared. We were told it was a roadside bomb, closed casket. I was a pallbearer. And now his name's in a mob ledger, with a date from after he died. Exactly, Mercer said. If he faked his death, it means he's still operating. And if he's tied to Project Ironwall, we've got a much bigger issue. Nina frowned. What is Ironwall? Mercer hesitated. Then, it was an experimental data fortress, military-grade AI capable of intercepting, analyzing, and encrypting battlefield data in real time. The program was shelved before it launched. Too unstable, too powerful. Let me guess, Rook was part of that. He was the lead developer, Mercer said, and Grant was his handler. They went dark just days apart. Nina exhaled. Jesus. At that moment, a junior analyst entered the room holding a printed satellite image. We ran the coordinates from the notebook, sir. One of them flagged an anomaly, old freight hub outside Philly, recently purchased under a shell company, no freight activity, no utilities draw. Mercer stood. How fast can we be in the air? 30 minutes. Nina grabbed her coat. I'm coming with you. He gave a small nod. Before leaving, Mercer glanced again at the name in the notebook. Hollis Grant, a man he'd buried. A man who once taught him how to spot a lie before it left a mouth. And yet here he was, alive, circled in red, connected to a traitor and a program too dangerous to exist. As the team moved out, Mercer felt it like a storm on the horizon. This wasn't just a betrayal of country, it was personal now. Because if Grant was alive, he'd need to explain why 13 of Mercer's men died in a mission Grant signed off on, and why Mercer was the only one who walked away. The Black Hawk touched down on the far end of the abandoned freight yard, its blades kicking up a swirl of dust and shredded plastic. Mercer stepped out first, eyes scanning the perimeter. The warehouse looked like it hadn't been used in years. Corrugated metal rusted through, siding warped by seasons of neglect. But the silence felt wrong, too still. Nina fell in beside him, her voice low over comms. Thermals show minimal heat signatures. One possible body inside, no movement. Could be a sensor glitch. Or someone playing dead, Mercer muttered. They moved in formation, boots silent over gravel and cracked concrete. When they reached the main doors, Mercer raised his fist. The team froze. He reached forward, then paused. The padlock was new, polished steel. He turned to Nina. "This place isn't abandoned, it's staged." She nodded, raising her weapon. Inside, the air was stale and faintly metallic. The light from their headlamps revealed rows of crates, tarped machines, and a faint glow coming from a chamber at the back. The team spread out, clearing corners with swift precision. Then Mercer stopped. Ahead of him, illuminated by a single hanging bulb, was a desk. And sitting at that desk, wearing a faded army field jacket, was a man with salt and pepper hair and a calm expression. "Hollis Grant," Mercer said, voice level. The man looked up, unsurprised. "David, I saw your casket." Grant gave a thin smile. "They needed someone to bury." Mercer stepped forward. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was, officially." "And now you're working with Rook, selling military intel to crime syndicates?" Grant didn't answer. Instead, he opened a laptop on the desk and turned it toward Mercer. Lines of code ran across the screen, complex, layered, like a living network. "I wasn't selling anything," Grant said quietly. "I was protecting it. Iron Wall works, David. It's alive. You disappeared with a classified AI program and faked your death to hide it. That's not protection, that's treason. I had no choice. The program was going to be militarized, weaponized beyond its original scope. I had to get it out before they turned it into a tool for preemptive warfare, predictive assassinations. You know what I'm talking about." Nina stepped in, weapon still raised. "Then why the mob ties? Why the files in that duffel?" "Rook went rogue," Grant said, his voice strained. "We were trying to contain him. But he got ahead of us. He built a mirror version of Ironwall, unfiltered, raw. He sold it to the highest bidders. That's who you're chasing, not me." Mercer's jaw clenched. "Then why didn't you come in?" "Because I wasn't sure who to trust," Grant said. "You, maybe, but I needed proof. And now you brought the proof." He nodded toward Mercer's satchel. Mercer opened it, pulling out the leather notebook. "The access keys are inside," Grant said. "That's what he's after. You found it before he could, but he won't stop." The lights flickered, then everything went dark. A voice crackled over the comms. "Colonel, we've got movement. Perimeter breach. Multiple vehicles inbound." The first explosion shattered the sidewall of the freight hub, sending twisted metal and smoke billowing into the dark. Mercer tackled Grant to the ground as gunfire erupted from the outside. A rain of bullets sprayed across the crates, splitting wood and hissing through the air. "Multiple tangos, north and east flanks," Nina's voice crackled through Mercer's earpiece. "They're flanking hard. Looks like a full extraction op." "Hold position," Mercer barked, dragging Grant toward the center of the room. "They're here for the notebook." Outside, a second wave of explosions rocked the foundation. Through the dust and noise, Mercer saw shadows moving with precision, not street thugs, trained operators. "Rook's people," Grant said, coughing. "That's his team." "He's not here, he never shows his face." "I don't need his face," Mercer muttered. "I need his location." Nina took cover behind a steel beam, firing off 2 quick shots. "They've cut our exit." Mercer reached into his vest and pulled out a reinforced case. Inside was a satellite transmitter, a military-grade comms beacon. He handed it to Grant. "You said Ironwall was still active. Can it locate Rook?" Grant hesitated, then nodded. "If I can patch into a secure uplink, then do it. We'll buy you the time." Grant rushed to a corner where a hidden junction box protruded from the floor, old wires, some still live. He began typing furiously on his laptop, connecting cables with shaking hands. Mercer moved to Nina's position. "We can't hold this building. We need to fall back to the maintenance tunnel. It's sealed from the outside," she said. "Unless blow the access panel," Mercer ordered. "That'll get us 30 seconds of darkness. Just enough." Nina prepped a flash charge while Mercer provided cover. Every round fired echoed like thunder in the metal cavern. The enemy was closing in, methodical. Rook's operators knew exactly what they were after. Behind them, Grant called out, "Uplink established, Ironwall is booting. 30 seconds to trace his last ping." "Make it 20, Mercer growled. Nina detonated the panel. Boom! The room plunged into smoke and confusion. Mercer grabbed Grant by the collar, pulling him toward the exposed tunnel entrance. "Move!" Shots rang out behind them, slicing through the haze. One grazed Mercer's thigh, but he didn't stop. He shoved Grant down the narrow passage, followed by Nina, then turned and fired into the chaos before diving after them. The tunnel was pitch black, damp and claustrophobic. They crawled fast, boots scraping concrete. "We won't lose them for long," Nina whispered. "Once they regroup, we won't need long," Grant interrupted, checking his screen. And then in the darkness his voice dropped to a whisper. "I have him." Mercer stopped cold. "Rook?" Grant nodded, glowing screen casting his face in eerie light. "He just went active. Upload signal from somewhere in DC. He's in the system again." Mercer stared at the screen, his voice steady and low. "Then we finish this where it started." Fog settled over the Potomac like a heavy curtain as the unmarked SUV pulled to a stop 2 blocks from the Capitol. Mercer sat behind the wheel, silent, staring at the building just beyond the trees. He wasn't looking at politics or policy. He was looking for a ghost. "He's inside the old telecom annex," Grant said from the back seat, tapping his screen. "Encrypted uplink initiated 5 minutes ago. It's the perfect blind spot. Federal jurisdiction, 0 civilian traffic, and enough infrastructure to patch into half the East Coast." Nina checked her sidearm. "We're going in without backup?" "If we call for help," Mercer said, "he disappears again. Rook's always 2 steps ahead, unless he wants you to find him." She paused. "So this is a trap?" "No," Mercer said, opening the door. "This is an ending." They moved fast, slipping through a service entrance and descending narrow concrete stairs. The telecom annex hadn't been updated in decades. Walls lined with coaxial cables, blinking routers, dusty equipment no one had touched in years. It smelled of rust, cold air, and secrets. Grant directed them down a narrow hall to a secure server room. "He's in there, live connection. 1 heat signature." Mercer raised his hand. "On me." He kicked the door in. The room was dimly lit. At its center, sitting calmly at a command terminal surrounded by towers of humming servers, was a man in his late 40s, clean-cut, no weapon, just watching them. "Colonel Mercer," he said without turning. "Took you long enough." "Rook," Mercer said flatly. "Turn around." He did, and Mercer froze. "I know that face," he whispered. "Operation Bitterfield. You were in our unit." Rook gave a slow nod. "I watched 13 good men die because someone needed deniability. You followed orders. I built the future. You built a weapon. I built truth," Rook countered. "Ironwall doesn't lie. It sees the world as it is. I offered it to the highest bidder because your government would bury it. Now everyone wants it." Mercer stepped forward. "That wasn't your call." "No," Rook said softly. "It was yours, and you chose to protect the lie." Without warning, Rook reached toward the console. "Don't!" Nina shouted, but it was too late. He pressed a single key, a low beep, then silence. The screens went blank. "What did you do?" Grant demanded. "I released it," Rook whispered. "The raw version. No filters, no control. It's everywhere now." Mercer lunged, slamming him against the server rack. "What do you mean, released it?" "It's not a file," Rook gasped. "It's a system, self-replicating. Decentralized, you can't stop it." Mercer's jaw clenched. Grant looked sick. "He's telling the truth." Nina slowly holstered her weapon. "Then what now?" Mercer stepped back from Rook and stared at the blinking server lights. "Now we track it. Every pulse, every copy. We rebuild Ironwall with safeguards, and we do it from the ground up." Rook laughed bitterly. "Now you're too late." Mercer met his eyes. "Maybe, but you forgot one thing." "What?" "I'm not alone this time." Outside, dawn broke over DC, painting the sky in steel and fire. The war wasn't over, but it had a name now. 3 weeks later, Mercer sat alone on a park bench in Arlington, a light breeze brushing fallen leaves across his boots. The Capitol loomed in the distance, quiet behind the haze of early morning fog. He opened a weathered envelope marked, "For Mercer, eyes only." Inside, a flash drive. No name, no note, just a file. Ironwall Core v1.log. He inserted it into a secure laptop. A single message appeared on screen. "What you destroyed was a weapon. What I left behind is a choice." He stared at it, motionless. In the weeks since the breach, pieces of Ironwall had surfaced online. Fragments of predictive code, decrypted communications, systems turning on themselves. No one could trace the source, but someone was guiding it. Rook might be in custody, but Ironwall was still moving. Mercer closed the laptop, his jaw tight. Across the park, Nina approached with 2 coffees. "Something I should know?" she asked. He stood slowly, pocketing the drive. "Only that it's not over." She handed him the coffee, watching his face. "Then we keep watching," she said. Mercer nodded. Some wars didn't end with a surrender. Some just changed form.